Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rob Shmuel, Rashbi here. Rob Shmuel ben Yehoshua, Rabbi Stephen with you with this week's Parsha. So I'm still trying to figure out how to spell Yehoshua in Hebrew. I don't know where to put the vav, but from what I understand, it really kind of doesn't matter. Or does it? Hebrew, we talk about Hebrew. And when I'm teaching the kids on my Sundays, I have some of the adults sitting in, and we get into a discussion on the nuances of the language. It's a very fascinating language, Hebrew, especially ancient Hebrew. It is a very efficient language. Now, English, you got to wonder about it sometimes. What I like to do, and if you've got a pen or a paper, write this word down: Ghoti. So when I'm discussing the differences between Hebrew and English, I will put that on the board, or I'll tell people to write it down and say, pronounce it for me. And people say, oh, goatee or something like that. I said, no, the word is fish. And they say, fish, that's crazy. How is that fish? Well, the GH as in tough, the O as in women, and the TI as in like the word action. Fish. That's how crazy English can be. You never know sometimes what the language could be. Look at English versus Spanish. In Spanish, you see an A. What is it? It's A. That's it. In English, it could be a as an apple. Okay, the word away, and a, right? So trying to wrap your head around in English can be very challenging a lot of times. Hebrew, it is what it is. With two exceptions, you look at the letters, and when you have the vowels, it is what it is. Of course, the challenge is when you don't have vowels, when you're reading Torah. And sometimes when you have a word that has an aleph, which is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it's a silent letter, it takes on whatever vowel is under it. And of course, in pure Hebrew, there are no vowels. You just kind of have to know the word, okay? Which, yes, can be challenging, but you can know it from context, okay? So again, looking at this example, the lamed, which is like our L. It's an ul sound, okay? So you have the aleph, which is silent, and you have the lamed, the L, okay? And how do you pronounce it? Well, there's three ways to pronounce it. Whether it can be El, which is a generic term for the word God, and I believe it comes from Babylonia. Then there's the word El, if there's an E pronunciation, and that means two. And then there's al, which is don't. So when you're reading the Torah, you need those two people there with the cheat sheets, with the chumash, with all the vowels, to make sure that you don't say al instead of el, which could be blasphemous. But the nice thing about Hebrew being such an efficient language are the prefixes and suffixes. So you have the word Egypt, which in Hebrew is Mitzrayim. Okay, Mitzrayim is Egypt. Mitzrayimah is to Egypt. See? So it's kind of efficient. So some of the suffixes and prefixes can be built into the word. So it's a real fascinating language. Okay, just thought I'd share that with you. Let's talk about Vaera, which means I was seen. Okay, so we have Moses, who is at this point our reluctant hero. God had tapped him to go back to Egypt, Mitzrayimah, to Egypt, and confront Pharaoh and say, let my people go. Let them leave their slavery for a 3-week or 3-day festival to worship our God. Of course, again, Moses never said we're coming back, but, of course, Pharaoh, with his hardened heart, with his stubbornness, said no. But Moses continues to give God an argument. I can't do it. I'm tongue-tied, right? I can't speak. God's like, go with Aaron. Aaron will lead you. And of course, in this particular portion, Moses and Aaron do go back to Pharaoh after Pharaoh has already told them, well, because of your effrontery, because you had the nerve to come and tell me, a king, that I need to let people go. Okay, guess what? Now, instead of having the straw that they need to make bricks, they're going to have to go out and find their own straw. So congratulations, you just made things worse. And of course, the Israelites are freaking out. They're like, thanks a lot. So Moses does not feel like he's up to the task, even though God, who is God, is saying, "Yeah, you are," and I'm God. I'm telling, I'm assuring you, things will work out. So, how do we view Moses with this? Okay, so we know that Moses goes to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh, after like 6 or 7 plagues, Pharaoh is like, no. Then he starts to relent. Then he goes back on his word, and God says, "I'll harden his heart." And we say, "Well, wait a minute. Um, why is God hardening his heart? Isn't that kind of a setup?" Well, Pharaoh has already made his own decision, and God is just helping him along. But let's get back to the point that we're talking about, the main point that I want to discuss in this particular drash. What about Moses feeling he's not up to the task and God having to not just prod him, but just basically go off on him and say, "Hey, do what just go do it. I'm behind you. It'll happen." Is how do we judge Moses? Of course, we shouldn't be, but we're humans and we do it. Think of it this way. How many times have you or somebody was coming to face with a challenge and they are wondering, can they do it? They're real hesitant. They don't have the confidence. They don't think I can do it. And let me sneak in a little thing that Richard Branson, right, who developed the Virgin brand, he said, accept a job that you don't know if you can do or don't think you can do. And then once you get there, figure out how to do it. Rise to the occasion. And that's basically what this lesson is. Moses does not have the confidence to do this, and God knows differently. God says, in a sense, if you read between the lines, yes, you do. You can do this, and you will do this, and you will succeed at it. I'm behind you. I'll help you through it. And again, how many of us, right, have faced a challenge? We don't know if we can do it, and maybe we shirk away, or maybe we just kind of bite the bullet, or there are people encouraging us, saying, yes, you can. You just need to have confidence in yourself. Well, having been a mental health worker and worked with in addiction, there is a saying that is prominent in the 12-step program: fake it before you make it, or fake it until you make it. Okay, so whether you think you're up to the task or not, do it anyway. Do it, and all the other stuff will come. Don't worry about whether you have confidence in, or whether you don't. Yes, it helps. It allows you to go ahead and plow through the challenge, even when things get tough. But the point is do it anyway. You don't need confidence to see a task through. Moses is God's mouthpiece, and he does a spectacular job, even though he complains, even though he whines through a lot of this. I can't do it. Pharaoh is Pharaoh. I'm just, who am I? I've had to escape Egypt. I'm just a man. Then he tells God, you're telling me to take care of 2.5 million people. I can't do this. And God's like, yeah, you can. And the people come, and later on, of course, where's our water? Where's our food? And Moses is like, what do I tell them? And I think once we get into Numbers, after they've been in the wilderness for quite a while, Moses finally, after doing it for a while, starts to either develop that confidence, or he just goes ahead and does it. And that really is the lesson here, folks. This is it. Okay, Moses was charged with a very daunting challenge, and yet he ends up seeing it through. Okay, he doesn't get to go into the promised land. Okay, I almost want to say, so what? So what? With what Moses achieved spiritually, it was almost like he didn't need to. He was plucked. He didn't die. He was just plucked, like, his soul just went to heaven, like, as the expression goes from the Torah, like plucking a hair out of a cup of milk. It was nothing, because he had this spiritual perception, this enhanced perception of being able to see beyond the physical world. And that's really what it was. So it's a lesson for all of us when we look at this, that whether you think you can do it or not, just go do it. God's behind us. Look at what our people have done for the last 4,000 years, right? We faced such oppression, such daunting challenges, and yet here we still are. So think about that. We will see you next week, next time with the next Parsha. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Leave a comment.